Welcome to the all candidates debate for the North Island provincial riding. Chief Chris Roberts of the Wew'wacum First Nation was unable to be here this evening, but he wishes to extend his gratitude to all of the aspiring politicians and wishes you all the best in tonight's debate. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder. I'm the Executive Director for the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce, and I'm your moderator for this evening's debate. Tonight's event is brought to you by the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. The candidates competing for the North Island provincial seat are Michelle Babchuk for the NDP, Mr. Norm Facey for the BC Liberals, Alexandra Morton for the Green Party of British Columbia, and Mr. John Twigg for the Conservatives of British Columbia. And now each candidate will have 90 seconds for their opening statement, beginning with Michelle Babchuk.
Thank you, Mary Ruth. I'd just like to first acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Wew'wacum and the Likwata-speaking people, and thank the organizers for putting on this forum this evening. Like Mary Ruth said, my name is Michelle Babchuk. I'm the BC NDP candidate for the North Island. I've been passionate about provincial politics for a long time, especially around public education, healthcare, housing, connectivity, forestry, and the environment. It's been a privilege to serve my community for the past 15 years, and I want to continue that hard work for the people of the North Island. I was elected to the School District 72 Board of Education in 2005 after I and other parents rallied around school closures. After 3 terms, in 2014, with the support of the community, I was elected to the City of Campbell River as a councillor, was appointed to the Strathcona Regional District, and has served as the chair since 2017. On October the 24th, I'm asking you to exercise your right to vote. My name is Michelle Babchuk, and I am asking for your support.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Facey.
Good evening. I'd like to begin by offering my thanks to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board and the Campbell River Chamber of Commerce for hosting us. It's a busy night. Our leaders are actually debating each other right now, but this debate is about your rep for your riding. My family has been part of the North Island community for generations. My grandfather logged the Sayred Plateau on a steam donkey. My dad's entire career was spent on the BC coast, first as a faller, then as a scaler, and finally as a booming ground operator. I started at my dad's knee, riding water taxis up and down the coast, looking at booms, and then working under mills before becoming a boom man in the family business. Was almost disowned when I went for an engineering degree, recovered when I joined McMillan Modell in Powell River, and enjoyed a career that took me across the country, coming back to the coast in executive positions in the forestry industry. Somewhere in there, my wife and I raised a family and built a sailboat, which we then sailed around the world on. That adventure showed us, without doubt, there are a few places in the world with a better combination of security, support, and opportunity than beautiful BC. The person we send down to Victoria should be someone that you can trust to listen and advocate for you and your family. The MLE needs to understand the larger community and share their values. It's their job. I'm running to make sure your voice is heard and respected again to rebuild your confidence being represented in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra Morton.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Morton. I'm running with the BC Green Party, and I'd like to acknowledge we are on the territory of the Wew'wacum. I've lived in the northern reaches of the North Island riding for 36 years, and so I have been able to see up close and personal the impact of different provincial policies. For example, the impact of the changes to the BC housing restrictions on contractors, the policies about giving tenures to residents in the Broughton Archipelago, and the raw law exports and the impacts that these are having on our communities. Now COVID has brought our job-rich tourism industry and other small businesses to the edge of bankruptcy. And so what the province does next is extremely important to the North Island. In this riding, we have wages that are among the highest in rural British Columbia. We also have one of the highest rates of child poverty. And so I believe that the role of the MLA for this region is to work with the 25 or so communities of the North Island to keep profits local, to bridge the gaps, I would look to businesses to tell me what they need to encourage local food security through small farms, develop green energy, construction of low-income housing, and I would be honored to work with First Nation governance, elected and hereditary, to support their work to protect and prosper from the resources in their territories. I'm going to make just one campaign promise that I will do everything I can to restore the wild salmon of this coast, because with them is an enormous economy that is important to British Columbians and to our ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. John Twigg.
I'm John Twigg. I'm running for the BC Conservatives, and I too recognize we're on the traditional territories of the Weewakai and the Weewakkum. I also thank the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce. That's an inside joke. And thank you to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. There are several reasons I am running again to become an MLA for North Island, but the main one, the most important one to me, is to promote the idea that British Columbia should begin now to develop self-sufficiency strategies in many key areas of our economy and society. It is increasingly obvious that the world is heading towards a horrific World War III, a nuclear war that could kill something like 2/3 to 90% of all humans alive today. And I want to help BC be in that 10% who survive. How can that be done? It means BC becoming self-sufficient in food and clean water, self-sufficient in policing and security, self-sufficient in banking and money, for example, bringing back the expanded version of former Premier W.A.C. Bennett's centennial silver dollar that his government issued in 1958. And BC has had its own central bank in decades past. And many other things we need, such as housing and energy, to survive. So as an MLA, I would be in a good position to advocate for better security for everyone in BC. And that's true regardless of whether or not World War III does arrive. For those who don't know me, I have been active in BC politics and journalism at the highest levels for more than 50 years, so I really do know how our governments work. I also know the North Island riding, having been here off and on for all of my 71 years, and my wife Laura and I have been living here full-time for about 25 years. I'm familiar with many policy areas, aided especially by also having been trained as a financial editor and a business journalist. I am pro-business, pro-environment, a church-going Christian, and a Democrat who would be honored to serve the people and businesses of North Island. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is from the Dogwoods North Island Volunteers. And the first question will start with Mr. Norm Facey. During the last provincial election, NDP was elected because they courted progressive voters on campaigning on promises to tackle the affordability, overdose, and climate crisis. And they said they would bring an end to raw log exports, begin phasing out open net fish farms. However, emissions are up, not down. Homes are more expensive, not less. The overdose crisis continues unabated. No fish farms have moved to unceded territory to closed containment, and you are logging old growth so they can export wood pellets to Japan. Now, as the candidate for the Liberal Party, how would you address these issues?
In 90 seconds.
In 90 seconds.
The BC Liberals are looking to build opportunity in BC with more money in your pocket to create jobs and investment in every part of the province. We're going to eliminate the PSD for a year to stimulate the economy, and we will eliminate small business tax entirely to keep more people working and get the communities, specifically the North Island communities, working and vibrant again. As we're doing that, childcare must not be a bear of your parents, especially moms trying to earn a living. We will subsidize childcare for low-income and middle-income families who need to get it back to work, including $10 a day childcare for the low-income British Columbians. And we will ensure the right childcare is available for every parent who needs it, and provide online applications for every government-supported care space. You can't afford ICBC monopoly any longer. We all deserve a choice when it comes to auto insurance. We will end the ICB monopoly. We will reduce rates for young drivers. We will drive pressure on rates for everybody. We will build a real pathway to get people off drugs and ensure safer streets and communities. We will increase public funding for public safety by $58 million. We will increase addiction treatment and recovery programs. And we will work to decrease crime and address the symptoms of systematic racism in our society. It's time to rebuild BC. We will invest $8 billion in infrastructure improvements over 3 years, an increase of 35%. And I thank you for the question.
Thank you. Alexandra?
With the BC Green Party, we would be looking at finding new and creative solutions for the homeless by building tiny house communities. We would assist in healthcare by raising the wages of our frontline workers to attract more nurses to the area. We would give First Nations the right to the authority to remove salmon farms from their tenure, from their territories. We would support families with small children, $500 a month subsidy for any family with a stay-at-home parent, free childcare for children under 3, and free child education for children between 3 and 4 years old. We would support the teachers by allowing the schools to wear masks on the children and activate the COVID alert system and support Bonnie Henry in her very important work. We would ban raw log export and prohibit the logging of productive old-growth forests and put a priority on businesses that keep their business profits local, inspire more sawmills to be built in the area, so that for each tree that is fallen, there is more profits going to the local communities.
Okay, thank you. John Twigg?
Thank you. I think the question was about logging in old-growth forests, not about the whole platform. But in any case, I'm going to focus on raw log exports and logging in old growth. I'm not totally opposed to log exports, and I'm not totally opposed to logging in old growth, but they have to be done selectively and intelligently and not massive clear cuts. We need to preserve biodiversity and genetics of the forest, and not just the trees, but also all the other elements that are in it. So yes, I'm supportive of the forest industry. I'm supportive of logging, but we need to do it with more care about the impacts on the future. And also we have to be mindful of the role of logging and forestry in the BC budget. The forest industry traditionally has been the largest industry in BC, and it needs to become that again, and we can do it. You know, renewable forestry is not a phrase, it's a real thing. And if we manage our forests better, I think we could all prosper better. More employment for local people, more exports of valuable products, more tax revenues for governments, more benefits for families.
Thank you, John. Michelle, as the NDP candidate, how would you respond to how is the NDP going to be progressive?
Thank you, Mary Ruth. You know, this is a very large question and encompasses a whole bunch of areas, but I'm very proud that in the 3.5 years that we have been in government that we have worked on all of those platform pieces. The climate crisis is a global challenge that we have to, it's a challenge of our time. And we owe it to future generations to look at that. Under the BC Liberals, they convened a climate leadership panel and ignored all of those recommendations. So we've moved forward and created the Clean BC plan. We've created an economic recovery plan to help with dealing with our COVID crisis. We've created an old growth management strategy to deal with some of those climate issues around old growth forests. We've created a 10-year housing plan that deals with affordability in housing. And as far as fish farms, we are the first government that has held a government-to-government process with First Nations, industries, environmental stakeholders, and government to address all of those fish farm tenures in the Broughton Archipelago, a process that to this day has been just touted by everybody as being great. We have a BC recovery benefit of $1,000 to help spur the economy, and we are the only government that has started off with a Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. So I believe that we have tackled a lot of these in the last 3.5 years. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next question begins with Alexandra Morton. BC salmon farming supports more than 6,500 jobs in BC, contributing over $1.6 billion to our provincial economy. It is a major contributor to North Vancouver Island's economy, especially employing nearly 2,000 people and generating nearly $200 million in economic output, much of which is spent on local vendors in communities like Campbell River, Port Hardy, and Port McNeill. 80% of the salmon farmed in BC is done in partnership with First Nations, including more than 1,000 Indigenous workers enjoying full-time year-round jobs, allowing them to live and work in their rural and remote coastal communities. How will you ensure that this industry will continue in these remote communities?
The salmon farming industry appeared to be a good deal for British Columbia when the NDP first brought it into this coast in the early 1990s. And I was living in a small community of Echo Bay at that time. We now have 27 salmon farms, and there's only 8 people left in the community. So it was not quite the benefit that was expected. We've learned a lot about it. And so what I would do is I would start canceling the tenures of the farms that are in the marine environment due to the emergency situation that our Fraser River sockeye are on and the sea lice problems that are on the farms. I would then go to the Canadians who are salmon farming or fish farming at all on land and see what they need to grow their industry. I would look at the fish farm processing plants, the logging or the trucks that move the fish from these plants as an asset, and also the people who know how to grow fish as an asset, and encourage the industry to move onto land, because worldwide, land-based salmon aquaculture is the hottest trend in aquaculture. And then I would set about restoring the wild salmon using the groundbreaking science that is being developed in Fisheries and Oceans Canada that can actually allow salmon to speak to us through reading their immune systems. So we would end up with both a vibrant aquaculture industry, and we would also get our wild salmon back.
Thank you, Alexandra. John?
Did they all get the same question? Because they didn't answer the same answers.
This is a new question about salmon farming.
Okay, I don't get to answer about NDP being progressive and all that. Okay. I'm a fan of the salmon farming industry. I enjoy its production. I also appreciate the huge contributions they make to the economy of Campbell River in particular and the North Island in general. And I want to see it continue, but I'd like to see them do a better job. As Alexandra has mentioned, there's improvements that can be made to reduce the sea lice. I don't know if closed containment will be economically viable, but we should give it a try. I think land-based salmon farms are ludicrous because of the huge amount of energy needed to push the water. It's a nice idea, folks, but it doesn't balance. We need locations of the salmon farms so that they're not on salmon migration routes. We need better management of the farms when they're out there. I think a lot of the feed would be wasted. It's no fluke that there's so many fish gather around fish farms because they're getting free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So yes, I support the salmon farming industry. I'd like to see their operations improved.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
Thank you. I first want to start off by just saying to Alexandra that I really respect the work that you've done in highlighting the environmental issues around fish farms. I really respect that advocacy. But the BC NDP has made huge strides in a groundbreaking government-to-government process that's happened that did take a look at tenure in the Broughton Archipelago. It was with First Nations leaders, industry, environmental stakeholders, and government, and they came up with an absolutely fantastic framework that I believe we can replicate when we're looking at the 18 fish farms that are in the Discovery Islands. That tenure issue is now being looked at, and there are currently some being taken out of the water throughout the next few years. But the biggest piece of that is the legislation that was passed, where by 2022, the government will not allow new tenure without the approval of First Nations or with DFO saying that the salmon farming is not hurting wild stocks. We also have a $142.8 million wild salmon restoration fund in cooperation with the federal government that will help us with our wild salmon stocks, and I am a huge advocate for wild salmon.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm?
Thank you. BC Liberals support science-based aquaculture. I have great respect for the skills and approach of the professional DFO biologists and appreciate the clear call they made on this question. Should note that under non-COVID conditions, there are 3 economic pillars in the North Island: forestry, aquaculture, and tourism. Aquaculture is a major contributor to this riding, and they have been a stable employer throughout the COVID issues. Tourism is in the tank, needs life support. Forestry has its challenges. Aquaculture is a solid industry, and we need to support it. And by the way, if they go to land-based, and if you talk to the companies themselves, they will simply move closer to their customers. If they go to land-based, they're moving out of BC. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. The next question comes from the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. Housing affordability. Realtors strongly support governments making housing affordability a key priority. They feel that improving the housing supply for homeowners and renters alike can be accomplished by streamlining approval processes, by employing initiatives identified in the government's recent Development Approval Process Review Report. If your party forms the next government, will you commit to adopting these measures to streamline approvals and bring housing supply to the market in a much more timely manner? John Twigg?
Thank you, Mary Ruth. Well, housing is one of those essentials that we need more of and better of, and certainly providing more land would be a good start. Speeding up the approval process through the city and regional governments, as it may be, that would be a big help. I think we also need to think outside the box a bit and start looking at things like tiny homes and converting existing buildings into homes. And especially, we need affordable homes for families, the nuclear family, the mom and dad and kids. That's where we really need housing. Now, we need housing everywhere. We need it for seniors. We need it for street people. We need it for mental patients. We need housing. But let's do more of the construction here with people trained here, on land here, and maybe even the financing here.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
Thank you very much, and for the question. And as a municipal elected person, I believe that portion of those processes needs to be done at the municipal level, and I will commit to working with the municipal leaders to make that happen. But I also recognize that it is very difficult for young adults, especially coming out of university or new parents, to be able to access home ownership, and that is often market-driven. The BC NDP is working on their affordable housing platform with doing rental. We will cap the rent rates at inflation. We are freezing rents until 2021. And we'll provide a renter's rebate of $400 a year to households earning up to $80,000. With our 10-year plan, we will build thousands of more affordable units. So for people with the middle income all the way down to low income or affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm Facey?
Thank you. Now, on this one, the NDP have broken their promises to ensure affordable housing options for British Columbians. Out of a promised 114,000 more affordable homes, they have opened just shy of 3,000. It will take more than 100 years for the NDP to reach their housing target at this rate. And house prices, rents, and property taxes continue to grow, making housing even less affordable. On top of it, strata owners are now facing up to a 1,000% increase in their insurance premiums, costing hundreds of dollars extra per month. So the BC Liberals will implement the most comprehensive housing affordability strategy in North America to provide new supply and affordable housing options for you and all British Columbians. We will establish an incentive fund for municipalities with housing policies that enable demonstrable increases in construction and the supply of new housing. We'll implement tax and permitting changes to boost housing supply, including rental and market housing to increase choice and improve affordability. We'll develop tax relief measures to help people hurt by COVID-19 economic impacts to keep their homes. We use provincial and municipal land for affordable housing. We'll invest in getting homeless British Columbians a home and connecting them with the health and social service supports they need. Enable affordable condominium strata insurance by encouraging and facilitating self-insurance models for stratas. Increase the supply of fully accessible units for persons with disabilities in newly built multi-unit residential buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra?
For the people living on the northern part of this riding, the problem is there just simply are not enough houses. And so if I was elected to the Green Party, I would work to change the rules under the BC Housing Initiative, where only specific contractors can be used, which don't exist on the North Island. And yet we have mills, we have community forests, and so we have everything we need to build these houses. We have the land base. And so I would work to relax those rules, but also to build the tiny house communities. On Malcolm Island, Sointula, we're certainly talking about this because people simply can't find a place to live. But also stress green housing, so housing that is solar powered. I live off grid, I have for most of my life, and the amount of power that is beating down on us is enormous. And so if we build green housing, then we don't contribute to the issues with climate change. These houses are also more affordable. There is a human migration headed our way. People are trying to leave the cities. And so I think it's very important to build a plan as to how these families will be integrated into our communities. We don't want to be run over by them, but they are a resource because they bring jobs with them.
Thank you, Alexandra. The next question is also from the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. Energy retrofits. While the pandemic has weighed heavily on the minds of British Columbians, climate change remains an existential threat to our planet. As many homeowners have considered renovation projects, they also need to think about ways that they can improve their home's energy efficiency and reduce its carbon footprint. Do you support BC Real Estate Association's recommendation for expanding and enhancing an incentive-based energy retrofit plan to meet the dual goals of both addressing climate change and supporting a post-pandemic economic recovery? Michelle, you begin this question, please.
The simple question to this is yes. And we have looked at that in the past. We have a very comprehensive Clean BC strategy that looks at emissions reductions. And John, just within this platform, has come out and said we will have net zero reduction by 2050. This plan is the most ambitious climate plan in North America, and it includes all of those retrofits, as well as targeting all of our industry to make sure that they are looking at cleaner, more affordable options.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm Facey.
Thank you. We all know that the world is moving away from oil within our lifetime. BC is well placed for this challenge with our strong, clean, and green hydro resources that provide the bulk of our electricity. Our next challenge is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation and buildings. That means we will need to invest in making electric transportation more widely available and updating our building codes. We are good at this, and right here in BC, we even have world-leading technology for innovation such as carbon capture. So let's kickstart the charge by planning for solar and wind power, preparing for increased reliance on electricity instead of oil, and making BC a leader once again in climate policy. We would expand public transit options, support investments in more electric vehicle charging stations across BC, support investments in renewable energy and next-generation clean energy, including working with the federal government and other provinces to leverage innovations in research and carbon capture, ensure a comprehensive greenhouse gas strategy that reduces emissions while enabling our world-leading sustainable resource development and indigenous land use, ensure decisions in every ministry across the government are made with environmental improvement as an overarching goal, and work with federal government to review scheduled increase of the carbon tax in light of the current economic conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra.
And I would say yes, absolutely. The Green Party would support a move towards greener houses and the expanded use of alternative energy. We would also include training for a workforce that is going to be required to install these, to visit homes, to assess the loss of power. Are the houses in the right direction for solar power? Is geothermal possible? Installing windmills on, say, water supplies so that when there's power outages, the whole town doesn't run out of water, as is currently the case. I think that the move towards greener homes is a real boost for the economy and also helps us ensure that we leave a planet for our children that is livable. So yes, this is a very, very important part of the Green Party platform, and yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. John Twigg.
Well, sit down, folks. Climate change is not driven solely by humans. As a matter of fact, humans are not even the largest driver. They're relatively small compared with solar variations. Nonetheless, I, like everybody else, is not in favor of increased pollution. And energy conservation in our homes obviously makes economic sense. It also makes environmental sense. But oil, Mr. Facey said, is going to go out of style. He's wrong. Oil, because it's so practical, is going to be with us for a long time. And the proper way to deal with this is to use each source of energy according to its best abilities. Alexandra is living off of solar power, and good for her. Here in Campbell River, maybe solar power is not viable for a community of so many thousands of people. But yeah, practicality. Let's do what is suitable for each situation instead of getting hamstrung and saying, oh, we've got to shut down the whole forest industry. We've got to shut down all the salmon farms. We've got to shut down all the use of oil. No, let's be realistic. Let's be sensible. Let's use best uses for each situation.
Thank you, John. I would like to take this time between questions to thank the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for sponsoring this evening's event. And I would like to remind the audience that's watching from home, if you are checking out the Campbell River Mere Facebook page, that we are monitoring that Facebook page for questions for the last 30 minutes of this debate. So if you visit the Campbell River Mere Facebook page, you can pose your question there and it will be fed to our timer, who will come to me. So if you have something you would like to ask the candidates, please go there now. The next question is about forestry. This one starts with Mr. Facey. Will you commit right now to supporting legislation that officially recognizes and designates the working forest? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it just a yes question?
It is.
Yes.
Alexandra?
No.
Okay. John?
I'm joking, but maybe. No, of course. Working forest makes absolute sense. Yes.
Okay. Michelle?
Yes, working local forests, yes.
Okay. What has your party committed to do for working forests and working families in this election? Alexandra?
I think when you look at the forest industry, it's been too stratified. There's the government, and then there's the large companies serving shareholders, then there's the contractors, and then there's workers. So I think there are too many levels. I think the North Island is being asked to provide too much to too broad an economic base. So we would localize it. Work with community forest plans, work with First Nations to reconnect them to their territories, because they are a government that is solely locally focused. And from that, then take sawmills and other value-added small businesses and really work with them. So for every tree that is fallen, there are more jobs rather than less. The mechanization, the faller bunchers that are in the forest are removing the jobs in the forest. Once the productive old growth is cut, there simply will be none. So we might as well build a plan now to get ready for the future.
Thank you, Alexandra. John?
Selective logging. Merv Wilkinson at the Yellow Point down near Nanaimo proved how well that can be done, and he's not alone. There's selective logging going on in the Caribou as well. We could be doing more of that here on the North Island. I've seen it, and we can have the best of both. I was instrumental in saving the Nat Triangle and including it in the West Coast Trail National Park. I've demonstrated to help save forests in certain situations. The wall brand comes to mind. We need forest jobs in North Island. We're going to need them long after I'm gone. And using the forests intelligently is really where we need to get to. So selective logging, cut block planning better, reforestation better, job creation and reforestation. That's a good thing too. So yeah, like so many of these questions and so many of these issues in this election, it's trying to be more intelligent about the policy choices we face. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is something that I know as being a councillor in Campbell River that has been very big for our city. And we just need to be able to put it all back into perspective. We are a resource-based community. We have always been, and we will continue to be, but we need to take a look at the new technologies and be able to train people to work into this sector. You know, with the Liberal government, we saw processing go down, harvesting go down, employment go down, and the only thing that went up was raw log export. As a new Democrat, we have developed the Coastal Sector Forest Initiative that talks about processing at home, taking some of that fiber off of the forest floor and giving it back to those domestic mills. In March of 2020, over 30 mills in BC have started back up. And we need to continue to do that and look at that on the North Island as we renew this forest sector. And also tie into it that old growth management strategy that takes a look at how we actually manage all of the fiber in our forest. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We are going to turn now to homelessness. Oh, yes, sorry, one more.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to miss this one.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Under the NDP, since the start of 2019, there have been 45 full or partial mill closures in BC. And over 10,000 workers have lost their jobs in BC's forestry industry. Instead of supporting our forestry-dependent families and communities, the NDP canceled the Rural Dividend Fund and eliminating much-needed assistance to smaller communities. And I think we all agree that forestry is one of the main pillars of the North Island. It's one of three economic pillars: forestry, aquaculture, tourism. Forestry is the largest. If you take a look for the province of BC, in excess of $12 billion contributed to the BC GDP. $4 billion in annual tax revenue. BC Liberal government will, right off the bat, introduce legislation to protect the working forest to provide increased certainty on the land base while protecting and enhancing environmental values. We'll implement a more efficient, effective, and responsive market price stumpage system to help keep our industry competitive. We'll work with industry to modernize forest management practices and ensure BC's forest industry is no longer the highest cost producer in North America. And we'll increase investments in silviculture to enhance the province's tree planting efforts and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is a core issue for the North Island riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Now we will turn to homelessness and mental health challenges. Starting with Mr. Twigg, John, what will your party commit to doing for provincial providing enhanced and progressive mental health supports, which will ultimately help with the homeless issues?
Well, I'm sad to say the Conservative Party of BC does not have a 10 inches thick policy manual. We're a small party. We're rebuilding. We have a new leader, Trevor Boland, who's from Fort St. John. So I have to answer by saying what I would do or what I would advocate for if I was an MLA. And the homelessness problem that we have here in Campbell River is serious, but it's minor compared with what's going on in Nanaimo and what's going on in Victoria and Vancouver. So it's also one of these problems related to mental health, of course, where there's complex factors. And coming up with a simplistic solution, one size fits all, isn't going to work. Sometimes a person who is homeless probably needs 2 or 3 attempts. One of the things that's missing here in Campbell River, though, not totally missing, but inadequate, is the security. We have, I don't know how many encampments around town now, but you drive around the downtown, you'll see that drug use is endemic. We've got needles, we've got tinfoil, there's way too much of it, and there's not enough police. So yeah, hiring social workers and giving them counseling is a nice idea, but that's not going to dry them out. I favor mini homes, tiny homes that are secure so that addicts get help to get off their drugs.
Michelle? Thank you, John.
Thank you. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it saddens me when I see Mr. Wilkinson stand in our community and talk about how all we are doing here is warehousing people. For the first time in forever, we have seen a 10-year financial commitment to actually add services to all of these housing options. In Campbell River alone, we've seen 197 units in 2020 by itself. That is unprecedented. 20 at the Rose Bowl with full transitional supports, 29 at Linda's Place with the Head Injury Society with supports, 41 at the Heritage River Inn with supports for the people that were burnt out of the apartment fire at Dogwood and 9th, 50 supportive units at the new 580 Dogwood with full supportive services, and 57 at the Rose Harbor expansion for second stage and affordable housing for women and children fleeing violence. We have achieved a lot in Campbell River, and we have had a lot of investment through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and BC Housing, and it just hurts my heart that the leader of the Liberal Party wouldn't recognize that and the collaboration that's already happened in this community. And as for the opioid crisis, we are the only party that's created a Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, and we recognize that prevention is key. We recognize that we need to be able to work with our kids and youth, and we will advocate for complex care housing to be placed in this riding in the future.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm?
Thank you. So the BC Liberals have installed in their platform a total of $4.2 million towards housing, which includes increasing the dedicated housing to the homeless. We do not support tents. We do not support, as has been mentioned by other NDP members, having permanent tent cities. People deserve a proper permanent roof, and we will help provide it. Over and above that, we will also provide the services required to match and identify the causes of why people are there. It could be economic, it could be mental health, it could be addictions. Health is a provincial issue, and it will be dealt with by the provincial government. We will increase funding for public safety also, because, as mentioned, there are sharps issues, there are conflicts. So we will ensure that we have the police and prosecutors and the social workers required to make things work. 200 additional police officers across the province, 100 extra psychiatric social workers, 40 additional full-time Crown prosecutors. We'll provide the prosecution services with the tools needed to reduce delays and aggressively crack down on crime and improve public safety. We'll also, in order to protect against domestic violence by adopting Clare's Law in place other jurisdictions, making violent criminal histories open to vulnerable members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra.
The NDP has stepped up to shelter the homeless, but there also has to be, along with that, safe injection sites, addiction counseling, life skill classes. This could be done by partnering with municipalities and nonprofits to operate a range of housing services, because the homeless not only are missing a house, they're missing a community. They need fully supportive, independent living. We must provide the regulatory framework and progressive policies, taxation, and support for municipalities, regional, and First Nations to increase availability of low-cost housing, to also incorporate the need for food security with this low-cost housing, with the tiny house communities. If you put them close together, you would build community, and the larger community of Campbell River and other towns would see that the homeless people were actually a part of society and providing a service that could be appreciated.
Thank you, Alexandra. At this point, this concludes part one of our debate. Part two, this is where it's going to get a little interesting. So what we have done is each candidate has the ability to ask a question up to 30 seconds long of any other candidate on the stage, and that candidate has 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. So the first question goes to Mr. John Twigg to ask any of the three candidates that he is with on the stage a question, and they have 1 minute 30 to answer. John?
I'd like to ask Mr. Facey why he is running for a party that had a pretty mixed record in power, turned a blind eye to money laundering by criminals through BC's casinos, among many other character flaws that the BC Liberals have tolerated, such as the Jane Thornthwaite sexism example of recent days. The promise by the Liberals to remove $7 billion from the budget by removing the sales tax on everything, including luxuries, is a grand example of why the Liberals really, they make posture as populists, but they're serving special interests. So, Mr. Facey, why are you running for such a group?
There's a wide range of questions in there. I think I'll deal with the infrastructure spending. We have fully costed what we've promised and made it available, John, so today you could take a look at it. We will be adding $8 billion to new capital investments to support transportation, health, education, post-secondary education, housing, and other commitments. That's on top of the previously announced $23 billion, which takes it to $30.9 billion. We are going to rebuild BC. It's going to help people in multiple areas, and it's going to provide very competitive jobs to boost the economy. We also have tax relief under the BC Liberal Plan, a total of $4.2 billion. The bulk of that is to eliminate the PST for 1 year, an economic stimulus to get the dollars moving. There's another $2 billion underneath the operating investments that support a caring BC, a safe and clean BC, and a thriving and prosperous BC. So, yep, we have a plan, we're capable of delivering, and we have a track record of doing that. Thank you for the question, John.
That's not a bad answer, but I still think they've got a problem.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Norm. Michelle, you may now ask a question of any of the other three candidates.
Thank you. I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Facey as well. In consultation with Dr. Andrew Weaver and the Green Party, we developed the Clean BC Plan, which has been described as the most ambitious climate plan in North America. Our Clean BC Plan is a pathway to a more prosperous, balanced, and sustainable future. It includes actions to reduce carbon pollution and use our energy to power BC's economy. Mr. Facey, I'm wondering, what is your party's plan to address the climate emergency?
Mr. Facey, you have 90 seconds.
89.
Thank you. Actually, I think I talked too much of this when we talked about moving away from the oil platform. So at the risk of repeating myself, we all know the world's going to move away from oil within our lifetimes. BC is well placed for this challenge with our strong, green, and clean hydro resources to provide all electricity. Our next challenge is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation and buildings. That means we'll need to invest in making electric transportation more widely available and updating our building codes. We're good at this. And right here in BC, we even have a world-leading technology for innovations such as carbon capture. So let's kickstart the process by planning for solar and wind power, preparing for increased reliance on electricity instead of oil, and making BC a leader once again in climate policy. We'll reestablish BC as a global climate leader and make BC a place where people have clean and green choices in transportations, buildings, and public services. Create jobs and reduce energy costs for British Columbians by encouraging the retrofitting of homes and businesses. Reduce the impact of climate-related disasters like wildfires and floods to make BC communities safer. Expand public transit options. Support investments in more electric vehicle charging stations across BC. Support investments in renewable energy and next generation clean energy technology solutions. Ensure a comprehensive greenhouse gas strategy that reduces emissions while enabling our world-leading sustainable resource development and indigenous land use. Develop decisions in every ministry across the government that are made with environmental improvement as an overarching goal.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Michelle, for the question, and thank you, Norm, for your answer. And now, Norm, it is your turn to ask a question of one of the three candidates on the stage with you.
Hi, Michelle. John Horgan, the Minister of Forest, and our own MLA Senior Cabinet Minister ignored the forestry crisis. No wonder as they chased protest votes with George Heyman of the Sierra Club, Nikki Sharma of Stand Earth, as well as Green Party votes. But my question is actually simpler than that. Why are we having an early election during a pandemic when the government should be supporting families and small businesses? Why are we here?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Facey. It's important to have a stable government at this time, especially during the time of this pandemic. And we would be having this election during COVID, whether it was called now or whether it was called in October of next year. It is always the right thing to ask British Columbians exactly what they think, and that is exactly what John Horgan has done. Thank you.
Thank you for the question and the answer. Alexandra, you now can ask a question of any candidate on the stage.
Michelle. When the NDP worked with some of the nations in the Broughton Archipelago to reach the agreement, which allowed them to decommission a number of salmon farms in that area, you say that you applaud that process and you want to apply that to the Discovery Islands. However, the NDP put those farms in the Discovery Islands on the migration route of the Fraser River sockeye. How will you address the rights and title that the Fraser River First Nations have to the sockeye that are now being exposed to the sea lice and effluent from the salmon farms? Will you be examining their rights in this situation?
In the spirit of reconciliation, I certainly believe that First Nations need to be involved in the conversation around fish farms. the Broughton Archipelago agreement that you yourself actually said was a fantastic process, I believe, and it is quoted as saying, is something that I do believe needs to be replicated, and those fish all have to come past to get into the Fraser River system. So I am a huge advocate of the wild salmon. I do believe that the money that's being put forward, the $142.8 billion for the restoration fund of wild salmon, is going to assist with that, because I do believe that there's also habitat issues, there is forestry and logging issues that need to be taken care of, and also encroachment onto those rivers by just development that we need to take a look at. But as far as the fish farm issue, the First Nations that I have spoken to here are quite willing and quite able to participate in that process again. They found value in that. The Salmon Farming Association found value in that. The First Nations leaders up north that I have conversed with have found value in that, and all of the environmental stakeholders as well. I believe that the government-to-government process that has happened is unprecedented, and we need to duplicate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of your questions. Thank you very much for all of your answers. That concludes the second part of this debate. You are watching the All Candidates debate coming to you live streaming from the Tidemark Theatre as well as the Campbell River Mirror Facebook page. This evening will be recorded and it will be shared out tomorrow afternoon on our YouTube site, the Tidemark Theatre's YouTube site, and the Campbell River Mirror's website. So if you did not catch the entire evening, you have a chance to watch tomorrow. It will also be on Shaw Spotlight Channel 4 locally. Thank you again to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for sponsoring this evening's event. The next question comes from the Ministry of Children and Family Development Services providers. Over the past 2 years, the Ministry for Children and Family Development has worked with families and community leaders to design much-needed systematic reforms through the new Children and Youth with Special Needs. This framework needs to be implemented without further delay and adequately funded to strengthen inclusion and equity while reducing barriers to access. Similar past reform attempts have failed due to inadequate budget investment and a ministry culture that has resisted meaningful collaboration and partnerships. But this time can be different. We can work together for real change. Within your first year of being elected, will you ensure the ministry is funded and supported to implement needed reforms under this new CSSNY framework? Michelle, I believe the question goes to you first.
That is a fantastic question. As a grandmother of an autistic child, I certainly understand the barriers that happen when we're trying to access resources for these children. He's just going into kindergarten now, and we're just sort of seeing what those barriers really are. So yes, I will advocate for that system in hopes that we can make sure that our children are given everything that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm?
I also have a grandchild. Name's Pete. He's a great kid, put a smile on anyone's face. So yes, I also support the initiative and look for it to be engaging and develop strong families, supportive families. Yes.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra?
Yes, the Green Party absolutely would support this initiative. The children are the future of our society, and every care has to be given to giving them every chance.
Thank you. John?
Me too. I've known some children with special needs, and British Columbia is one of the wealthiest per capita places in the world, and we could be even more prosperous if we worked at it. So there should be lots of room for social programs for all needs, whether they're autistic kids or drug-addled kids on our streets or adults with mental deficiencies. Yeah, there's no shortage of money. Let's get it done.
All right. Thank you so much for your answers. The next question comes from Katie Maximic. How do the candidates intend to tackle the problem of the rise of housing costs, especially rentals, here on the North Island? For example, 3 years ago, a rental unit that would have been $1,000 is now $1,500. We know that people's wages have not increased 50%. So how would you tackle this problem? Norm?
We're looking to establish an incentive fund for municipalities with housing properties that enable demonstrable increase in the construction supply of new houses. We need more houses. We need to implement tax and permitting changes to boost housing supply, increasing rental and market housing, to increase choice and improve affordability for British Columbians. We will work with municipalities to review the current property tax structure to incent affordable housing development, prevent speculation, and drive affordable rental housing. Require reviews of official community plans every 5 years that are public, robust, and transparent, that require the zoning bylaws to be updated to reflect changes to the plan within 1 year after adoption, and allow for the waiving of hearings for official community plan compliant projects. Support zoning reform to improve inclusionary zoning and ensure that the residential rental 10-year zoning tool cannot be used to devaluate and downzone property. Ensure no net loss of rental units in real estate development projects. Develop tax relief measures to help people hurt by COVID impact projects to keep their homes. Use provincial and municipal land for affordable housings. Reduce delays in building permit approvals and new homeowner costs. Improve the municipal development approval process based on best practices. Strengthen and reinforce regional growth strategies targets so they're robust and effective.
Thank you. Alexandra.
The problem is there aren't enough houses, and so there has to be planning done at the municipal level with community members, with First Nations, to create affordable housing. And so we keep coming back to the tiny house communities, which is an idea that it really wants to happen, but is going to require rezoning of areas to allow it to occur. There also has to be consideration about all the empty houses that are in many communities where there's part-term residents and they leave them empty for long periods of time. Do we want to raise taxes on those types of houses? These are things that have to be considered as we are facing a human migration. People are trying to get out of the city. There are issues with climate change to the south of our border. So this is something that really has to be planned out very, very carefully with community members. I am so struck at talking to people all over this riding of the wisdom and consideration that exists in our communities, and I think that has to be harnessed and pulled together in a way that we're prepared.
Thank you, Alexandra. John?
One of my best friends operates 2 trailer parks, and he speaks often of the bureaucratic delays and the extra taxes. And now the NDP government has brought in a rent freeze, which, you know, for the renters is great news, but for the landlords, it reduces their profitability and therefore discourages new starts by the private sector. So should BC Housing step in and do more? Well, yes, and it already is, but probably not enough. The solution to the great shortage is to incentivize the private sector to do more and better, and to build a full range of housing, including smaller units.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
You know, in Campbell River, we want our young people to stay here and not move away. And that is becoming more and more of an issue for our young folk of today. You know, the BC Liberals ignored speculation as the average cost of a detached home in Vancouver went up $600,000 in 2 years. They allowed huge rent increases. They promised to cancel the speculation tax, which was driving up house prices. They want to give $2 million tax break to people with homes that are worth more than $3 million. That certainly doesn't help our young people to stay in our communities. The BC NDP is putting the brake on skyrocketing prices. The speculation tax is starting to work. 11,000 more condos were used for long-term rentals in 2019. We did cap rents till 2021, and we're going to cap the increase to inflation after that. We're on track for 58,000 more housing starts over 5 years, and the Liberals said that we promised 114,000 and have only delivered 2,000. That is just not true. There's 25,000 homes already available or under construction. It's a 10-year plan. We're making progress, but there is more to do.
Okay. Norm?
Didn't I start this one?
Yes, I thought you did. Okay, thank you all. Yes, thank you all very much for your answers to that question. The next question is regarding tourism. That is one topic that we haven't touched on yet this evening. There are a huge number of people in our area here in the North Island who work in tourism and ecotourism, but are now either out of work or scared that they may not have a job come the spring. They may not make it through the winter because of COVID-19 and the lack of travel that has been allowed. As the world starts moving around again, taking whatever part-time job they can get, given time to stay above water, there has been a lot of talk tonight about supporting the forestry and the aquaculture industries, fair enough, but what would your government do to support the tourism industry, which is a billion-dollar industry here in the province? Alexandra?
Yes, well, for one, we would restore wild salmon. I mean, that is a top priority for tourism. Taking tourists to watch bears eat bears for lack of salmon is not popular. But as far as COVID goes, I think that the government needs to assess each operation individually and not put a blanket ruling down. You cannot have guests, you cannot take your boat out whale watching, you cannot do these things. I think there has to be, and it is labor intensive, but I think to save this industry, each company has to be assessed and what practices they have put into place to protect their customers and to support them in that. I think that is critical going forward.
John?
We're sitting in an empty theater here, and I think Alexander's mention of being selective rather than blanket is a good example. The risk of having, say, 50 people in this room, I don't think would be that high, especially since we have such a low incidence of COVID here. In terms of tourism specifically, COVID will be gone and the tourism industry will still have constraints. Inadequate ferry crossings. It's good enough for the people that are here to commute, but for tourists coming here on a whim and then finding out that there's a foresailing wait at the peak of summer, that's not good enough either. So I think tourism, like forestry and other industries, it needs a study, a plan, a public involvement, a process, so that we can come up with both general and specific solutions.
Thank you, John. Michelle?
I've spoke to a lot of small businesses over the course of this campaign, and the tourism industry is the one that tells me that they are still hurting the most. A lot of our small businesses that can maintain our local flavor are fine. The ones that can access any online or connectivity to get their wares to market are doing okay. But our ecotourism providers, our restaurants, our pubs are really suffering from the fact that they do not have the people coming through them as much as they used to. Our government did offer some help with that. Wasn't exactly what they asked for, but there was some assistance that was given, and I look forward as your MLA to being able to take these extra concerns to Victoria so that we can continue to work on what that tourism industry needs.
Thank you. Norm?
Thank you. The tourism industry is one of the pillars. We've talked about it. Forestry, aquaculture, tourism. Tourism is on life support in the area. And I, too, have gone around and talked to various members, and the NDP just flat turned them down in terms of support. The BC Liberal government will eliminate the small business tax entirely to keep people working and getting our communities thriving again. and to remove barriers that would actually take people out of business due to bankruptcy. Deliver emergency financing for BC businesses hardest hit by the pandemic through a loan guarantee program for BC's more than 19,000 tourism and hospitality businesses. Work with the tourism industry and municipal partners to support the development and growth of regional tourism hubs across BC. Work with municipal and federal partners to ensure ongoing support for critical community airports, which are impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. It's critical to the North Island to retain our airports and make sure that we can still move people through the issues. Support workers in our cultural sectors by protecting funds for arts and culture organizations forced to suspend operations as the result of COVID-19. The BC Liberals will step up and provide tourism the life support they need to be there on the other side of the pandemic. We need them. We need to make sure that we're not starting 3 years from now to rebuild their facilities. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. The next question has to do with connectivity. COVID-19, for all of its challenges, has shown us that we as human beings need to have internet connectivity so that we can study, work, and reach out to our family and friends. How would you ensure that the connectivity be expanded beyond our city centers into rural and distant communities? John.
Yeah. As somebody who's been limping along on a damaged computer due to a hacking for the last several weeks, I really appreciate the connectivity issue. And I've also lived in a remote community, Yubo, for a while, quite a few decades ago now. And the people in smaller communities, Port Alice comes to mind. Hello, Port Alice. Yeah, they need internet too. I had a friend in Lillooet who I never met face to face, but I knew him through the internet, and he's passed on now. But yeah, the BC government, to its credit, has done a fair amount of work to expand internet connections. And in fact, Campbell River, with its downtown network, is a leader in this kind of stuff. But I mean, who can be against it? The question is, who pays? I'll leave it there.
Thank you, John. Michelle.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. You know, I think there's a lot of people in the urban centers that don't understand how limiting it is for rural, remote, and Indigenous communities to get connectivity. With the pandemic, it's become as important as our roads, and that's how our people are connecting with loved ones and even doing just everyday tasks. So that's why I'm totally excited about the new $90 million that the John Horgan government has announced in its BC Recovery Plan to assist rural, remote, and Indigenous communities with connectivity by partnering with internet service providers of small, big, and large to get connectivity to those who need it. You know, Mr. Twigg talked about the Campbell River Advantage Plan, which is enterprise-level fiber that is being developed inside the city of Campbell River to promote and attract the tech industry. I can also speak about the Connected Coast Project, which is a subsea fiber ring that goes all the way around Vancouver Island, connects in Campbell River, and goes all the way up to Port Hardy in conjunction with their wholly owned provider of City West, which is there to connect all of our rural, remote, and Indigenous communities and is a partner between the provincial government, the Strathcona Regional District, City West, the federal government, and Indian and Northern Affairs Canada. So we are working on it a lot. It is exciting, and we are very happy to be able to provide that internet connectivity to those rural, remote, and Indigenous communities.
Norm?
It is amazing how critical it becomes to connect using the computer systems nowadays. But I see it, it's real. And I too am excited by the Connected Coast submarine cable. 154 communities, some facilities buried in there too. 75% federally funded, 25% provincial. and an excellent example of how a local government can work together to pull in and connect the, in this case, remote communities. There is some issues with the last connection that I think needs to be worked on superbly by the province, but I think the base is there.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra.
I also applaud the Connected Coasts initiative, but I think it needs to include the Mount Waddington Regional District, not just Strathcona. We certainly need the connectivity just as much, and it is the answer to so many problems, whether it is schooling or jobs or what families can do in our remote communities. So yeah, it's very important.
All right, thank you all for your answers. The next question follows on your answer, Alexandra, with regards to education. What do you personally think of the current funding model for public education system, and what would you do differently, if anything? Michelle.
Well, as a school trustee for 9 years, I believe that when the funding model changed, it took out some of the key pieces because it just talked about students as literally bums in seats. There was no fixed costs that were associated with it, no special needs that were associated with it. So I would like to see some advocacy around what that could look like. Truthfully, I do not know what would come out of that discussion, but I believe that there needs to be some collaboration with the BCTF, the ministry, and local school boards to be able to have those discussions. You know, we've fought for class size and composition for many, many years. That's part of the funding model. We're hiring 4,200 new teachers. We've got the smallest class sizes that we've seen in decades. So we're hoping that we can address that as we move forward. We are now looking at COVID-19 and distance learning funding models, whether or not we should be providing infrastructure like tablets and laptops for those distant learning people. So lots of conversations to come. I am very happy and very proud to be involved with Minister Fleming, who has been able to put together a back-to-school plan that has kept our kids safe. And I am looking forward to advocating for public education in the future. And just a shout out to my trustees here, Cedar Elementary School is high on my radar.
Thank you, Michelle. Norm.
We're into a key topic. And I'm struggling myself with the safety aspects of having students in school at this point in time. And I think we actually need to do more remote learning, as difficult as that might be, to ensure that we don't have issues where people are testing positive and then we have to do the tracing. It's very hard. I'm actually glad I don't have a school-age child. I don't have to chase the dilemma. I think also we need to take a look at the economics we can make in education and training to ensure we have skills and opportunity to offer adult learners to learn from the pandemic, to build and train the health workforce of the future, to adopt the disclosure requirements of the UK Office for Standards in Education, ensure all BC students know before they register the total cost of a program, the graduation rate, and the employment rate. Establish a new work experience for students, including co-ops and job creation times of high employment with collaboration with the federal government. Encourage more British Columbians to pursue and complete apprenticeship training by streamlining registrations and credentials, and bring trades competency into the school system and expand secondary school trade programs to begin credentialing earlier. We need to provide some life skills too. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Alexandra.
Well, I'm not informed on the current funding model for schools, so I can't really speak to that. But I've talked to a number of teachers, and I have to carry their words that they are terrified in their classrooms. They don't understand why we were told to go home and close the door and distance, and now they're in a room of 30 to 40 children for 5 hours with no masks on. They do want masks. They want the COVID alert. They do want transparency when the virus is being detected in a school. Was it a teacher? Which classroom it was? Because they're scared for their lives. But I think this goes back to smaller classrooms, which teachers have been advocating for a long time. And the North Island really needs better counseling. They need to prepare children for secondary education if that's where they want to go, and give them the full instructions on what they need to do next. But I know that our teachers are struggling now and doing an amazing job in a very, very difficult situation, and I do think we need to help them feel safer.
Thank you, Alexandra. John?
Well, we do have one case of COVID in a Campbell River school, and only one. And so I understand what Alexandra is saying about the teachers that are terrified. But, you know, walking around downtown can be terrifying too. But to answer this question about what can we do about school funding models and governance models, my friend Bob Bray is here of Social Maverick Federation, and he is a strong advocate of charter schools. And I'm sure he'd love to answer that question. I'll do my best, Bob. I support charter schools in competition with public schools. More parental involvement in charter schools, not only with administration, but also curriculums. So, yeah, let's make the public system compete with private alternatives on a level playing field and see what that does. You can applaud, Bob.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for your answers. The next question is regarding our health system. How will you handle the increasing pressures from private clinics and the push to privatization of our healthcare system? Do you agree, or do you wish to keep it public and accessible to all? Norm?
Must be about my turn. I believe that we have some of the best health technology in the world available to us. I believe that if you're willing to invest or accelerate yourself through the health system, you should have access to more and other clinics, skills, systems. So yeah, I do believe that we should have a blended system, that we need a strong, vibrant public system, and that if we can enhance that with other technologies, if we can enhance that with other clinics, that we should do so.
Okay, thank you. Alexandra?
I think we got a stark lesson about private health care with the shocking death rate of our elders in senior care during COVID. Profiting off the care of seniors clearly is not working, and so it would be better to move to a blend of public, community, and co-op funding. Second of all, I know there's a very big issue here in Campbell River. We need to bring back the clinical pathologist position that got farmed out to Victoria. We cannot allow Campbell River's medical capacity to be eroded. When 75 doctors in one community say something is wrong, we should probably listen to them. So we need to be very careful, because in that case, the pathology position went to a corporation in Victoria. So private healthcare appears dangerous at this moment in time, and so I think it needs to be really kept public as much as possible.
Thank you. John?
I agree with Norm about the blended system. I agree with Alexandra about the clinic issue, the laboratory issue that we have here in Campbell River. That's very concerning. And both of those fit in well with my own feeling. I don't know if we have party policy on this yet, but we'd be better off with both. We need a healthy public sector and we need a healthy private sector. I think it can be done. The either-or debate, maybe it turns some people's political cranks. But you look at it from the patient's perspective, waiting for long times to get treatment. That's not good. Nobody wins on that. Now, the lawsuit that's been ongoing for decades about the private clinic in Vancouver, can't remember the fellow's name that's pushing it, That's more a queue jumping issue, I think. But like with housing and like with education and now this, if we all worked at it with goodwill, we could find a system where both the private and the public sector can coexist.
Thank you, John. Michelle.
I believe in publicly funded, fully accessible health care for everybody. And the way we do that is by resourcing that sector. Before COVID-19 and during COVID-19 are building 13 new or improved hospitals. Hundreds of thousands of people will get care in urgent primary care centers. Hundreds of new doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers through our primary care, and hundreds of thousands more people will get to connect with a team of doctors. We've cut wait times for hip and knee surgeries before COVID, and then of course COVID hit, so we had to take that back a little bit, but we are very much close to getting back to where we were before that started. Slashing wait times for MRIs, because we have 8 new MRI machines that are now operating 24/7, and $1.6 billion more into the healthcare system to hire 7,000 more staff and to fight COVID. I recognize the Citizens for Quality Healthcare for all of their advocacy that they're doing around making sure that we have services in our Campbell River and Courtenay hospitals. And I would advocate to make sure that those services still stayed there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are now nearing the end of this debate. You've been watching the All Candidates debate at the Tidemark Theatre in the city of Campbell River for the North Island riding coming up in the provincial election on October 24th. You can go and vote as early as this coming Thursday on the 15th. There are 7 advance voting days, as well as the actual election day on the 24th. So please exercise your democratic right and vote. I would like to thank each of the candidates before they give their closing statements. Michelle Babchuk for the NDP, Norm Facey for the Liberals, Alexandra Morton for the Green Party, and Mr. John Twigg for the Conservatives of BC. If you have not been able to watch all of this debate, it is being recorded, and you can find it tomorrow afternoon on our YouTube channel, the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Tidemark Theatre's YouTube channel, as well as the Campbell River Mirror's website, and it will begin airing on Shaw Spotlight Channel 4 tomorrow evening, and it will remain there until 24 hours prior to the election day. Thank you so much for watching, and we'd like to thank once again the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for sponsoring this evening's event. And now we will go to each of the candidates in reverse order from which we started for their closing statements, beginning with Mr. John Twigg.
Can I go last? No, I'm just kidding. BC needs a strategy to survive Armageddon. BC needs many strategies and specific moves to increase our society's safety and security. We cannot depend on Ottawa and the federal government. We have only about 10% of the seats in the Canadian Parliament. We only have about 13% of the economy. We must urgently become maîtres chez nous, bosses or masters of our own affairs and of our own future. And that includes us, BC, having our own central bank and a revived BC provincial police force. I said revived because we used to have a provincial police force, and obviously with the shortage of policing that's going on now, we need that again. BC government needs to be far more proactive on many, many fronts, as we've seen with the questions here tonight. There's a lot of different issues and a lot of different policies that need to be improved. So a crash program for food self-sufficiency, a crash program to reduce homelessness and street crimes and reduce addictive drugs. And my notes say, probably some people tell me, you shouldn't have said that, but generally to adopt Bible-based policies for personally and in families, and especially in government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Alexandra Morton for the Green Party. Your closing statement, please.
We are in unprecedented times, without a doubt. Even before COVID started, we are changing our planet. We're causing catastrophic changes that we can't even calculate. Now, the NDP have been very strong on social and health issues, but they are playing dangerously with our future, with subsidizing the LNG wells and building Site C on a geographically unsound substrate. I mean, the risk to that is incalculable. So I believe that we need to do some really different things. One of the things I think it would be very important to do is form a new ministry in the province to calculate what we need to entirely get off of fossil fuels and build an inventory of what can be done in each area and put it out to tender. Have the companies come to us and say, I can do this geothermal. I can put in these many solar panels. We can put in this much wind energy. And in that way, build a resilient communities that are interlaced with connectivity and green energy. I am so impressed with the wisdom that are in the communities. I knew about Sointula and Echo Bay and Alert Bay, but in talking to Tassis and Zabalas and Gold River and Quadra Island and Cortez, we are really a rich network of people. And I know we are all worried about the future of our children. I'm a doer. So if you elect me, we will do things that will benefit our children.
Thank you, Alexandra Morton. Norm Facey, closing statement for the BC Liberals.
Thank you. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the people of North Island were concerned about their financial well-being. Over the past 3 years, all of us, homeowners, employers, and families alike, have watched our taxes creep up under the mismanagement of the NDP, 23 new or increased taxes. Worse yet, for 6 months, the labor disputes between Western Forest Products, the workers, and most importantly, their families, were totally ignored by the NDP government. The Forest Minister and even our own MLA were too busy in Victoria. So a loud but peaceful group of North Island residents rallied to Victoria and parked in front of Parliament. The Premier didn't come out. The Forestry Minister didn't come out. Our own NDP MLA did not come out. The North Island needs someone who understands and respects the national resource industries, encourages small businesses, someone that understands cash flow and can find the opportunities where legislation or own ways of thinking are blocking our future. I'm that guy. My wife and I have 2 kids, 2 90-year-old parents, and 1 grandchild, Pete. We need someone who will stick up for our grandchild and our aging parents. I will do that. Calling an unnecessary election during a pandemic is pure political greed. The NDP were up in the polls and got power hungry. That is not about you, not about your family, not about the North Island. The world's in a tizzy. We need calm, thoughtful leadership that can bring us up and out of the hole. The BC Liberals are those leaders. That's our track record. My name is Norm Facey. I'm asking you for your vote as a BC Liberal in the North Island riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Michelle Babchuk for the NDP.
Tonight, I'm asking you to make a very important choice. A choice that will help determine the direction of the North Island and the province over the next 4 years. We can make a choice to go back to the old BC Liberal agenda with 16 years of looking out for those at the top, increasing MSP and hydro rates, raiding ICBC, and plummeting forestry jobs. 16 years of empty promises and no gains for the workers of BC. What Andrew Wilkinson is offering you now is more of the same old, same old. Or you can make a choice to invest in the BC NDP Clean BC plan with a pathway to a more prosperous, balanced, sustainable future. Invest in people with our $10 a day childcare plan and our affordable housing plan. Or invest in a strong economic recovery plan that will help everyone get through this unprecedented pandemic together. This would be a vote for the John Horgan government. I'm proud of the work that he has done to lead us through this pandemic, and I would like to join his team so that we can get work done. On October 24th, please exercise your right to vote. My name is Michelle Babchuk, and I'm asking for your support.
I'd like to thank each of the candidates for the courage you are showing in throwing your hat in the ring, running for the North Island seat in this provincial election 2020, the year that we'll remember for a very long time as an unusual year. So thank you again for your time, and thank you for your participation in tonight's debate. Thank you to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board for sponsoring tonight's event, and thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. You can watch the recording on our YouTube starting tomorrow, as well as the Tidemark Theatre's YouTube, Shaw Spotlight, Channel 4, and also the Campbell River Mirror website. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening.